Welcome, everybody. My name is Christian Antweiler, and I am the co-chair of the Adam Smith Society chapter here at Booth. Right off the bat, I'd like to express my gratitude to the Graduate Council, Manhattan Institute Student Services, and the staff here at Gleacher for making today's event possible. The Adam Smith Society's mission is to promote debate and discussion surrounding the moral, social, and economic. Those MBA students, if you haven't already, considered signing up as a member on Booth groups to get access to more events, swag, other perks, and of course our Slack channel. Additionally, the Adam Smith Society does not end with business school. It's a lifelong professional network that you can be a part of throughout your career to stay connected to free market ideas. With that having been said, I'm extremely excited to welcome Ms. Yeonmi Park. Born in North Korea, human rights activist and TED speaker, Yeonmi Park grew up in a punishing society devoted to the worship of Kim Jong-il. But at 13, she and her family escaped to China in search of a life free of tyranny. In her talks, viewed online nearly 350 million times, Park urges audiences to recognize and resist the oppression that exists in North Korea and around the world. Thank you so much for joining us here today at the University of Chicago.
Thank you.
Woo.
So as we progress through the talk tonight, for the people dialing in on Zoom, feel free to type in your questions, whatever comes to mind, and our moderator will feed those to me as we go along. And for the club members that signed up, the first 20 or so do get a free book, so make sure you claim that with Lance after the event. So Yeonmi, I'd like to start today's discussion by talking a bit about life in North Korea, its government, and then your personal journey from tyranny to relative freedom. I realize you cover much of this in your book, numerous talks and many podcasts, but hopefully it serves to enlighten many of our audience who haven't yet had the opportunity to learn from you. And then I'd like to dig deeper into a topic that's at the root of the Adam Smith Society's mission, to try to understand your perspective on freedom, capitalism, and what may drive societies towards the path of tyranny from which you escaped. So to start, take me back to an average day in your life when you were 11 or 12. Can you describe to us what that was like, what you eat for breakfast, how you get to school, what you would learn at school, things like that?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm so honored to be here. It's kind of, starting describing my daily life back in North Korea, it cannot be further more different than what we are right now. Usually, often almost like when people ask me to describe life in North Korea, I'm almost like it's a different planet. When you grow up in North Korea, there's no concept of like minor or adult. They view everyone as a revolutionaries. So in order to serve the revolution of communism, that we all have to work. So we have to be joining this labor at 5:30 a.m. sitting next to American bastards. It's like same life, but maybe I am dreaming. In school, I learned that Americans actually are cold-blooded monsters. So they are not even humans, right? And we don't have internet, so you cannot go Google it like if it's true or not. Like that's all you get, what teachers tell you. So even though in math class, they would say, if there are 4 American bastards, you kill 2 of them, then how many American bastards left to kill? That was our math problem. And yeah, I literally believe that Americans were like monsters trying to kill us. And they taught me that we were so fortunate to having our dear leader to protecting us. A lot of us skip the lunch, and even though regime tells us that how it's beneficial to not eating lunch. So they tell us it's actually good for your health. And then they take us to another collective work, to children, adults, everybody have to be in the part of group in North Korea. You cannot be individual. Like when I came to Chicago and Americans were telling me, oh, America is so bad and this capitalism is so evil because we have inequality, and look at these people, homeless people we have. And I was thinking, what do you mean you have a right not to work? Eat dinner and go to sleep. And at home, of course, we don't have internet. We don't even have electricity. Have you guys seen that photo of North Korea on the satellite pictures? Right, it is literally the darkest place in the world. In 21st century, they cannot even afford to have electricity. Then we have to go to sleep when the sun sets, and then repeat the same cycle So that was my daily life in North Korea. Not that interesting, I guess.
No, I mean, it's fascinating for us to hear that. Just out of curiosity, what was the grading system like? Maybe, I don't know if you remember, but do you receive A, B, C's?
North Korean children need to spend 500 hours a year studying each Kims. So 1,000 and 1,500 hours studying 3 Kims every single year. If you fail at that test, you're going to concentration camp. So this education is a tool to brainwashing children, and also watching out who is not receiving this message seriously. So everything they have is a user tool to control people.
So everything you just described about daily life, it seems like the government, it permeates everything. Is there any part of it that is free of government, personal relationships, things like that? I wonder if maybe the friendship between you and your friends would be similar to a friendship between 2 girls in South Korea, for example.
So this is interesting. In North Korea, actually, we don't have word for friends. So they, I'm sure some of you had the George Orwell's like 1984. It talks about doublespeak. Why do we control language? I mean, this is very alarming right now, being in America, how people are obsessed with controlling words even. But in North Korea, they got rid of words like friend, love between humans. They don't have a word for freedom. They don't have a word for human rights, or they don't even have a word for gay. So if you don't know the word, that means you don't understand the concept. So we have a word for comrade. Comrade is a very different connection. You are a comrade and you are fighting for the revolution of the party. You're not friends to helping each other and supporting each other. So even between friends and like comrades, we don't know who spy is. Like spies are everywhere. So the first thing I still remember that my mom told me as a child was, don't even whisper, because the birds and mice could hear you. So you learn as a child that you never like speak. And she told me also, the most dangerous thing that I had in my body was my tongue. If I said one thing that was not liked by government, I was not the only one who was getting killed. 3 to up to 8 generations of my family gonna get killed because of the one thing that I said.
Wow.
So the tongue is the most dangerous thing that we got in North Korea.
So you said there's no word for human rights or anything like that, but was there any concept like that, even if there wasn't a word for it? Did you have any right to do anything that was recognized by government? Really?
So yeah, I mean, it's as I said, I gave a speech at TED, and a lot of people think that somehow when you are born, I mean, you just had a baby, right? We somehow know what justice is, what is democracy is, what freedom is. No, we don't. Like back in like early centuries of humanity, of course, they had no idea what human rights was. This is an invention of the Western civilization. So because of that, people have no grasp what it is. And because we don't know that we have a right as a people, we don't even demand it. And this is something so sad about North Koreans is when people asking me, like, why North Korea, there's no revolution? Like, are we all dumb? The truth is that nobody in North Korea knows they're oppressed. When in America, you hear every day, like how people are oppressed here. I'm like, you are not oppressed if you know you are oppressed. Like if you are actually oppressed, you will not know that you're oppressed.
So can you give us a brief history lesson for the ignorant ones among us like myself who don't fully grasp how totalitarianism came to take that form in North Korea?
So basically, after the Korean War, right, the Soviets were helping North Korea, and American was supporting South Korea. It was a Cold War. They were trying to spread democracy and communism around the world. And during that time, Kim Il-sung came in and then told the North Korean people that he was going to give them a promised land, which is free healthcare, free education, no inequality, that we are going to be all the same, having a wonderful life. But in order to do that, we had to give everything to the government. So they abolished private property. So nobody can own the land. Nobody can own anything. So this promise was very popular by North Koreans. So in a way, it's such a sad thing about democracy is that we always think in some sense, like democracy sometimes leads to this populist and then ending up in authoritarian rule. And like that, when Kim Il-sung came, he was elected by North Koreans as a leader because he was promising this amazing idea that was called socialist paradise. So many people passionately chose him and become the leader, and of course made it into North Korea, living here.
Talk to us about your family's daring escape. How was it arranged? Walk us through your journey through China and South Korea.
I was 13 years old. It was 2007. I remember one day I was very sick and my mom took me to the hospital. And again, this is a free healthcare country. We don't have electricity. We don't have x-ray machines. Doctor just rubbed my belly. And then he said like, maybe she might have appendicitis. So they opened me up that afternoon without any painkiller. And they opened it up and they realized it was not it's nothing. Like they literally cut your bones while you're awake. Like anesthesia is like something that we don't even understand what it is. And literally a nurse in the room using a 1 needle to inject every patient. So you, like in North Korea, we don't die from like cancer. We don't die, of course, from obesity. We die from infection and starvation usually. So our life came into really a situation where we could not find anything to eat. And I was luckily living in the border town of North Korea that was facing China. So at nighttime, and I looked at China, they had electricity lights. So that gave me an idea that if I go where the lights were, I could find a bowl of rice. So my sister somehow found a way to escape. So she left me a note saying, oh, go find this lady. And she escaped first. So a few days later, I found a note and I found the lady and asked her, can I go to China? And she said, yes. And I didn't even ask her why she was helping me because it didn't really matter. If she didn't help me, I was gonna die in North Korea anyway. So I had to follow her.
Were there any critical decision points that you faced as you were going through that escape?
So that's the thing, like when it comes to North Korean defectors, it's not like even like these refugees are fleeing in the like Central America right now. It's almost like, did you see that the Apple Tower when it was like, caught on fire or humans falling down from the window, right? They're so desperate. It's like that kind of position that you are so desperate, you're gonna die from starvation. So you just jump and see what happens. And that's how we ending up in China. We just go there because we are so desperate. It's not like we have a time to sit down there and thinking about how I'm gonna escape, what are we gonna do? We just try to find the next meal to survive.
So I realized then you faced a lot of other hardships after that initial escape. And I don't wanna just rush through that, but when you finally did get to the shining lights in South Korea, what were the first things that stood out to you, like those major differences?
That freedom was hard, right? I mean, I literally crossed the Gobi Desert into Mongolia to be free. And at 15, I went to China, long story there. And then one way to be out from China, Chinese tyranny, was going to South Korea. So I had to cross desert to go to South Korea. And I was thinking like, where I'm going into free world, right? I thought everything was gonna be awesome. But once I landed in South Korea, I could not believe how hard it was to think for myself for the first time in my life. Like in North Korea, when you're born, before even you are born, based on what my grandfather did during the revolution, my life is determined. Governments like tell you what to do. Like they literally even tell you what kind of hair to get, right? They even tell you what skirt to wear, clothes to, what to watch, what to read, what job to do. They send you a collective farm. You do not get to decide anything about yourself, including even clothes and haircut. But suddenly in South Korea, there are 10,000 options of, makeups, even jeans. And not only that, like it was very scary because I went to South Korea and the first thing they told me was, by the way, Americans are not bastards. They're great people. And like, by the way, Kim Jong-un goes poop and he's not a god. Because in North Korea, we brainwashed to believe that he doesn't even go poop. He's a god, right? like it's the funny because Kim Il-sung was growing up in a Christian family. His parents were like believers. So when he became the leader in communism, they kill God, right? They kill the religion and they become God themselves. So what he did was copying the Bible, said he loved us so much that he gave us his son who was Kim Jong-il. His body dies, but his spirit is with us forever. Therefore, he knows what we think and how much hair we have in our head. So exactly, I mean, that's why the Bible has 10 commandments and North Korea has 10 commandments, the same thing. They copy the exact same principle of the Bible and brainwash North Korean people to believe that they are gods. And so in South Korea, they told me that Kim Jong-il was not a god. And that was very hard to believe in initially.
Right. So let's move on to your experience in the U.S. You attended Columbia University, and now you live here in Chicago. What brought you here? What has been your primary focus since finishing your book? Like, what is your primary focus now?
I know it's very. So I initially started working as a human rights activist because, I mean, the United Nations says what's happening in North Korea is a modern day Holocaust. Holocaust is happening again, and we are not doing anything about it again. And North Korean problem is going on for the last 80 years. Like, who are we as a humanity if we can be letting Holocaust continue? So I was trying to do that in America, letting people know what's happening to North Korean people. But like, have you ever met North Korean before? Right? I usually say I'm a true unicorn because very rare species. There are only 209 North Korean defectors made it to America in the last 80 years. It shows how impossible it is to make coming out of that country and be alive. So while I'm doing this mission to raise awareness, I have to talk about China because China runs North Korea. Xi Jinping, CCP is supporting Kim Jong-un to stay in power, to use North Korea as a buffer zone to prevent democracy coming in from South Korea, Japan, and America. Literally, atrocities are happening because this Communist Party in China is sponsoring this event. And I'm trying to talk about that. And I'm also saying a lot of people think that slavery ended somehow. It hasn't. I was bought in China as a sex slave at 13 for less than $300. My mother, who was sold for $65 in the 21st century as a sex slave in China. There are right now 300,000 North Korean girls just like me being sold and killed, and their organs being harvested out of them. And this is not talked about because of China is so powerful. Nobody in America, Hollywood, media, corporations, academia, especially does not want to do anything. Even with the COVID, right? They killed so many millions of people and we are not asking for their accountability. And because of my message with China, now I'm facing censorship in America. So in my life, I never thought in this land of the free and home of the brave that I had to fight for freedom of speech. And this is where my activism now is focused. Actually, I'm not writing my second book. I was at Columbia University, as you said, and seeing how America is choosing this direction in the name of good intentions, in the name of like helping making everybody equal. We are, punishing freedom of speech that made America great. So this is what I am doing now, really trying to also fight for freedom in America, really.
So I've heard you described as controversial, and I was wondering what you think about that, why that is, and how do you respond?
Which controversy? I have so many controversies around me.
Well, honestly, I'm not sure. On the last, on like the Jordan Harbinger show, he said there was some controversy of him just hosting you, and I was.
Oh yeah, because I know it's insane. Like when I came to America, literally, when I was in North Korea, they did not tell me that I was Asian. They told me that I was Kim Il-sung race. North Korea has a different time zone. And not only that, we have a different calendar. Our calendar does not begin when Jesus Christ was born. Our calendar begins when Kim Il-sung was born. So I'm the last person who would be a racist because I have no idea what race even is. So because I came to America and I say that hate speech has a room in this country, that we should let people speak, even though that is hateful. And now they say I'm a Nazi, I'm a racist, I'm like right-wing conservative. That's why I've been canceled in America lately. It's insane.
So in my preparations for this evening, I came across a statement that I thought was very eloquent, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but you said, the problem in the West now, people want things that are free, but nothing is free. Everything has a cost or a trade-off. In North Korea, it seems like everything is free healthcare, free education, and then it turns out nothing is free. So I was wondering, do you see us heading down that path here in the US? You sort of said that you do. What freedoms are we giving up by, let's say, giving people free healthcare?
It's not just the healthcare it is. I mean, I've been living in America. I just became a citizen. So now I'm one of American ambassadors too. I mean, during the pandemic, governments print like trillions of dollars each month, right? And of course, now that is inflation, and which means that is taking money out of the working class of Americans. That's a theft. They are stealing money from our effort that we built this prosperity. And then government is becoming this big almighty God again, like North Korea. They're gonna help us in everything. They're making us becoming more reliant to government. In some ways, that nothing has been more horrible than big governments to individuals. I mean, how individuals ever gonna decide to go study World War II? The governments does. Big governments like Nazi Germany did, right? Japan like starts that. I think because of that, the American governments keep going up, increasing. And I mean, when they're promising healthcare, I'm not an expert actually, but I don't think how can anything be free. I mean, even imagine like me drinking this cup, like water, right? Somebody had to go somewhere, fertilize this water, bring it here. That person's labor matters, right? Someone had to pay for them. So that person can have their children, feed their children. So because of that, when there's a word like something free, it might be really free today, but we are gonna pay with our lives for that later. Like North Koreans, like they bought this idea of free education and free healthcare. Look at the North Korean people. They are forever enslaved to this one guy, that is Kim Jong-un. And all their life existence is helping this Kim Jong-un to stay in power and being this immortal God.
So do you believe in the idea of natural rights? The idea that just by existing, you have a right to life, liberty, and property, for example. Where do you think individuals derive those rights?
Oh, well, if you don't believe in God, I guess you have to drive that meaning by being a human.
Right.
I think I was really actually very bitter when I came out of North Korea and especially China, looking at the world. In South Korea, there are these like amazing concerts and campaigns to save puppies. There's so many, I'm a human rights activist, right? I work with the people who work for animals' rights. Nobody ever asked them, why do I have to care about these little puppies? They all say, oh, you're doing so amazing. But when it comes to me, they're like, okay, so tell me, why do I have to care about human rights? And I'm like, are you not a human being or something? Like, if we don't fight for human rights as a human beings, do you think puppies gonna be? Or like nobody can fight for human rights other than us. That is why we need to fight for human rights, because it's our rights. And I think because of that, like we need to defend this idea that we have this natural given rights from whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, that is the only way that we can help each other and move forward as a humanity.
So how do we resist that gradual move towards the loss of freedom in exchange for security or government services? I think you're doing an outstanding job by just speaking out against it. Do you think that's the most effective weapon, is just verbal communication?
I
guess what strategy would you use to fight back against
know it's very, I mean, I just got this email. I'm a YouTuber. I make contents on YouTube, and Google just sent me an email saying, if anybody do not supporting Ukraine, their content is gonna be demonetized completely. So you can totally say that what is happening in Ukraine is an atrocity. It's all Putin's fault, but maybe US should not be engaged in too much. That is not allowed. I think what we need right now is some courage, that we should be okay to be wrong. Like what I'm fighting for in America is not like, you have a right to be wrong. You have the right to be stupid, especially in classrooms and universities. You can ask dumb questions. And in the name of safe space, right, we are banning that. At Columbia, the first thing they give you is orientation is like how you're gonna have a safe space, not physical violence, but from speeches. In a university, why do you even go to university if you do not wanna hear opposition-like idea? So I think because of, and now if you speak up, of course you get canceled, you lose your job, you tarnish your reputation. And in this time, I think we need to not be like North Koreans worrying about mice and the birds and watching us. Like, do you really truly think now being in America, living in America right now, do we not censor ourselves? We censor ourselves. And what extent are we gonna accept that? So I think because of that, the first step should be all of us being free of this tyranny that in our head now, that we have to watching out the big brother, big government, big tech, whatever it is. So that is leading us to becoming like North Korea, that nobody is so afraid to speak their minds now.
Do you think there were any benefits to life in North Korea compared to life here? For example, you were recently mugged and assaulted on the streets of Chicago. And I assume something like that is much less likely to happen in the streets of Pyongyang. So, you know, is that actually the case? Do you think maybe there are some like security benefits, for example, of that tyranny?
Well, I mean, even if I get mugged here, I'm like dying with full belly. So every North Korean dying mission is like, I don't mind like if I die while I'm eating, you know. So I'm fine. If I get killed in America by some random shooting, I will be gladly go. But there's one thing that I do miss about North Korea is a human intimacy that is not distracted by this social media. That it's appalling. I'm actually a mother. I'm raising a child. So we smuggle Chinese phones into North Korea in the border. The North Korea has no internet, right? But in the border, just across the river, they can receive Chinese data and the network. So I call the Chinese phone from America. Then the North Korean person answers. So that's how we get the information out and how we send information and money as well.
Incredible. So my final question here, you're raising a son now in a polar opposite environment from your personal upbringing. What are your hopes for him? How are you raising him? How do you make sure that he's appreciative of what he has here in the US?
Oh, well, just one thing, I really hope that he doesn't become a communist. That'd be nice. I mean, like his school, his daycare he goes to, and like this principal sending me how they're teaching my son equity. I'm like, how lovely. I just escaped that nonsense, and now my son is learning about all this equity, you know, how they're making everybody equal. That's very scary to me. So let's hope that. And not only that, I hope that he becomes resilient. That humans are so resilient, right? We survived Savannah, look at us, what we achieved. But right now, what it seems to me is Americans are losing their resilience, you know, and become this snowflake generation. They cannot even be like depressed by somebody saying something to them. Like at Columbia, literally, right before the classroom, they not even like we say anything. They say we have to go through our pronouns first, right? And like I'm in a lecture with 300 people. Instead of me understanding who they are as an individual, I have to memorize their pronouns so I don't become a bigot. And one day I just called the they as he because he looked as a man, but they, and I'm like immigrant. I just learned English a few years ago. And he was crying and he was so like really affected by that. So that was really shocking to me, see that this generation is raised to think that is a oppression, raised to think that was the biggest fear that you can go through in life. And I hope we can raise strong children that is a strong man.
Definitely agree with that. With that, I'll turn it over to the audience if anybody has any questions. Go ahead, Joel.
Thanks for being here tonight. I'd like to ask you a question about, so you're noticing things are changing here in the United States. So I don't know if you share the same opinion, but it seems to me that the biggest capitalists in America are the ones pushing for totalitarianism right now. Corporations, Hollywood, corporate media.
Yeah.
So to me, coming from Brazil, it's very ironic.
Yeah.
Growing up, I always saw the capitalist is against the equity at all costs. So wanted to get your thoughts on that, how you're seeing the corporate here in the United States.
So just for the audience on Zoom, I guess I'll repeat the question. Just to paraphrase, the question was about what are Yeonmi's opinions on this move away from freedom in the US, if I paraphrase that correctly.
I really think there is a difference between corporation and capitalism, I think, to me. Like big tech, especially, right? They get huge benefit from government's protection. And because of that, I do think that are a threat to republic. And that does not mean we different thing. Why does America's, these elites who are actually benefit the most from free market are supporting this ideology of a big government? Korea, right? It almost like in the Russia, like after the Soviet Union collapsed, like the oligarchy became in charge. We can't call it capitalism. So much corruption has happening in America. And not only that, like a lot of America's economy is heavily relied on China, especially the Hollywood. Right now, if you want to make a movie, trying to distribute, you have to go to Chinese market, right? Then Kim Jong-un has his own pleasure squad, which is going around the entire country, picking up young virgin girls and take them to Pyongyang, and he raped them. And he has 2,000 harems every night. And not only Kim Jong-un has that, all these top elite guys have the same thing. So in Pyongyang, they're committing unbelievable evil crimes there. And of course, as you can see in the satellite maps, the Pyongyang has electricity. Pyongyang has transportation. So Pyongyang is almost like a different universe for the North Korean people. And even as a North Korean ourselves, we have no right to travel to Pyongyang. Like even going to next town in North Korea, you need a travel permit. So like just right now in China, that you need the government's like permission to travel within China, same thing. That we don't even have a freedom of movement in the country.
Yeah. So, question: Do you feel like when you get some questions or when you do these speaking engagements that you're getting inquiries in good faith, or to some extent you feel like maybe perhaps your audience might just be kind of looking for, like, hey, this is validating my way of life, or like this is validating my like distorted perception, or just kind of furthers like my ability to kind of, almost for amusement rather than intellectual curiosity. And second is, to what extent do you, so you talk a lot about diversity, equity, those initiatives, and given like how strong the ties, actually, I'm going to pause there because that's like a whole other bag of worms. So I'll just start with the first question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, right? Like there is a lot of things happening in America that is concerning, which is like division, so much echo chambers, right? Even though I'm none of the political things that people call, like the fact because I say that we should fight for freedom of speech and the Second Amendment, they say now you're far right wing. But then I'm like, I support the women's rights, I support the gay marriage, all of that. So it's appalling that whenever you say something you don't like, they try to box you into something, then they have a reason to hate you. That's why we are keep going this direction of division in the country. Actually, believe it or not, until pandemic 2 years ago, I got robbed in Chicago, like in the Michigan Avenue at the Macy's, right? During the looting, all these people were looting. Until that point, I never thought like looting was something allowed thing. It's a complete crime, even in North Korea. And then I was robbed by these 3 Black women. And she would punch me and took my wallet out. And this is a Michigan Avenue. People are walking on the streets. So it's like 4 p.m. during the afternoon. So I was trying to call the police, and she started calling me that you're racist. The skin of person does not make me a thief. So you are racist. And then I was asking for people help on the street, and they are telling me that I'm a racist because I'm not a black, and I'm accusing a black person to become a thief. If that person got charged, she committed her crime, and now she's in prison actually for that. She committed 15 other crimes, so the charge really dropped. But I wanted to show her that this is not what you do, using the race card, committing a crime, and then accusing somebody to be a racist, right? I think until that point, I did not speak up because I was scared. I was in some ways in the arms of the liberals. I was speaking with Hillary Clinton. I wrote my book with one of the liberal, mainstream agents in America. And of course, after I came out, almost saying I'm a kind of libertarian, and then I had to almost move agent. I had to remove everything. So because of that, I think I'm never invited to somewhere to be the, affirming their perceptions and do that. And because I've been in many different political areas, and in some ways, I don't think people are that. I don't think people are that bad usually. People are genuinely curious what is happening in North Korea, because North Korea is one of the few last mysteries left on Earth, right? We can easily go to Mars or the moon, but not North Korea. We might go to the moon in our life to visit there than North Korea in a lot of time. So because of that, there's a genuine curiosity among people to want to know what's happening there.
Go ahead.
Hi,
Hi.
thank you so much for coming. I'm with the Chicago Thinker, which is an undergraduate conservative libertarian publication on campus. And I wanted to ask for your comment in relation to what you've been doing with academic freedom. UChicago has classically been known as a defender of this academic freedom, perhaps best articulated in its Calvin report, which requires the university to be politically neutral. However, with the creation of the Race, Diaspora, and Indigeneity Department, multiple departments sending out official statements in favor of Black Lives Matter, and students being forced to agree with COVID-related political statements as a prerequisite for attending the university, at least for undergraduates, but perhaps also graduates. This freedom is now under attack. How do you think students here should try to remedy this trend, and why do you think they're so afraid to attempt to do so?
I just graduated from university, so I know exactly what it means. Every single lecturer makes it very, very clear how much they hate Trump. Literally, I was starting my university when the year that Trump got elected. So in a way, I got a very bad deal. I paid almost $500,000 to hear about how everybody hates Trump, right? I really asked for them refund, but I didn't. It's appalling. Even I was looking at the really long time American TV shows, like the nighttime TV hosts, they were not political. You could not be saying what the Daily Show is doing, clearly, obviously what they are. I think especially in universities, if you are in a position of teaching people and opening their minds, unless you indoctrinate them, it's literally, that's indoctrination. If you are as a professor and telling these 17, 18 years old, just got out of high school and telling them how Trump is a horrible person, that person gonna believe you. It's not it's not I'm defending Trump in any way, oh my gosh. But I think that's the thing, when they have the power and teaching these children, almost university students to do that, I think that is in some form of indoctrination. And the brainwashing is happening in American universities for sure. You need to call that what it really is. Why in North Korean classrooms and telling us that American pastors are evil, that was a brainwashing. We are accepting that. But telling in universities and telling university students, again, all the problems that we have because of white men, that is not a brainwashing. It's the exact same thing. And that's why I'm scared right now, because this is happening and people are not recognizing what is happening in this country right now. Thank you.
So are we having Zoom issues? All right, so I apologize to the audience on Zoom if you're not able to post your question. I'll go all the way in the back.
Hi, first of all,
Hi.
I just wanted to say that it's super inspiring to hear you talk.
Oh.
And I really admire your ability to stand up for what you believe in, because I know it's really hard. I myself consider myself to be pretty liberal, but I'm also very like moderate in the way I think, which is not popular.
Okay.
And if you say that, people will jump on you and
Yeah.
think all sorts of things that aren't true at all. My sister and I here are both Jewish, and actually there was a mass shooting in 1999 when we were kids. A white supremacist went on a big shooting here, shot Blacks, Jews, and Asians, and our brother was shot. He was fortunately survived. He's well.
Wow.
But even to this day, when I talk about that, people are like, well, because I'm white appearing, they're like, well, they didn't shoot him because he was Jewish. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? It's a well-known mass white supremacist shooting. He shot Jews, like 11 Jews in our community. Our brother was one of them. What do you mean, right? So people try to tell us what our experience is. And it's like, because of that experience, I feel like we've learned a lot about racism and a lot about hate and a lot about how even when, yeah, people obviously can be hateful on the outside, but people are so quick to try and silence people who disagree with you that even our brother, who was shot by a white supremacist right here in Chicago, said, you know, I would still want someone who disagrees with me to be able to express their opinion, and hopefully they would come to the right conclusion with more information, right?
Yeah.
So I feel the same way. Like I consider myself to be pretty liberal, but I think that if somebody disagrees with me, that's good, that's healthy.
Yeah.
And if you do have racist beliefs, I know that to get you to not be racist wouldn't be to be like, you're a racist, you're this, you're that, and assume what you believe. The only way to get people to change their opinions is to meet them where you want to be met, which is at the basis just a human being, right? With whether or not they're wrong, right? Like let them be wrong. Say, hey, maybe this person came to this conclusion for some reason, right? They grew up sheltered, they grew up with depression, or they're hateful, or whatever it is. But if you can see someone else as a human being, say, hey, at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, right? We all want our loved ones to be safe. We all want to be safe. We want to move over our heads. The way the Republican, the Democrat, the red, and all this nonsense. And people are much more likely, and I've had my own experiences talking to people, even family members, who have racist, maybe don't think they're racist. Without saying, you're a racist, you're xenophobic, you're homophobic, you're that. Where obviously, if you attack someone, what are they going to do? Like, I don't want to listen to this, right? But if you say, hey, maybe think about this perspective. Think about how you feel when someone clubs your whole community and tries to tell you how you live. Wouldn't that not feel great? I've had people who are racist be like, you know what, you're right, right? Whereas like, you just attack someone on Facebook, no one's going to be like, you know what, good point, actually. I think you're right. Mostly they'll just start attacking you back.
Yeah.
So first of all, I just want to say I admire the fact that you've been through so much, and even to hold such kind of controversial views, even though they should be like, that's general, right? That's pretty like normal that you would have a balanced point of view, but they being balanced isn't popular.
Yeah.
People want you to just pick a side, like fit this box or
Yeah.
this box, or I'm going to tell you who you are.
Just in the interest of time so that we can get to folks.
The point is, what do you think is the best way to bridge that gap and to get people to, I don't know, see a wider perspective? The people who think they already have a wide perspective.
Yeah.
Who are actually very close-minded. How do you, first of all, keep going?
Yeah.
Especially since you've been through so much, it's like insulting for some people to tell you what you should or should not feel.
Yeah.
What do you think like the way to bridge that gap is?
Yeah, I think I'm sure like not all of you agreeing with me right now sitting here, but that's good that you're here and not yelling at me like shut up. I think that's the first step, that we need to listen to each other, and we always have a benefit of doubt that maybe they know what they're saying. I mean, it's been so interesting to me. I've been like talking about, you know, so my son is half white, and then like at Columbia University, like the professor saying, why do we have poverty? Because of white men. Why do we have a climate change? Because of white men. Like why we have a crime? Because of white men. Like every single thing goes to white men. And then they are saying how Black people are so oppressed because of white people. And I was thinking like, do you know anybody right now who is white, alive, never owned a slave? Like, do you hear that? Like in North Korea, because my great-great-grandfather owned the land, tiny land. So they said my blood is tainted for the rest of my life. You have to be guilty for your ancestor crimes. This is North Korea. Now in America, because of your great-great-grandfather might possibly owned somebody as a slave, now you need to answer your ancestor's crime. And this is why I say this is like North Korea. I'm not exaggerating. This one little aspect is reminding me of North Korea. And they're like, what do you know about oppression? And I'm like, maybe I don't. And they were like, you're a white passing person. Do you know what that is? So I had to look through, I Googled like white passing person. And well, I was an actual slave. And they're telling me like, what do you know about oppression? And these people who were born in America in their like $150 yoga pants, drinking vegan like juice or like cleansing, and telling me like, what do you know about oppression? So I think this is why we need to keep talking to each other. It doesn't, and then I recently at this conference, and then I gave a speech about why I think this like Bitcoin, the decentralized form of money might helping refugees who are running away from governments. And then like Jack Dorsey tweeted about it. So I was very glad like somebody was in a position of influence, really hearing about what refugees are going through. And people like, how can you talk to someone like somebody the far right wing, obviously. I wanna throw up whenever I hear that name. And I was like, you know, those are people. Like, it's not like I don't want to talk to New York Times. Only Fox called me when I called out a cancer control. Only Fox wanted to hear me what I had to say. I was waiting for CNN and the New York Times to call me, but they did not call me. It's not like I do not want to talk to the other people. So I think that's and stop demonizing people because of their ideas. What really like still warmed my heart when I was becoming American citizen, one test in the citizenship test, they're asking me, have you ever persecuted anybody for their political opinion? If you said yes, you cannot become an American. So what these people are doing, they all need to give up their citizenship. They're not Americans. You cannot cancel somebody for their political opinion. That is not American. And people are forgetting our founding principles because they want to tear down the Constitution.
Blue shirt.
I thank you very much for your time tonight. I wanted to ask if you believe that there are countries other than the United States that serve as a bastion of freedom today, and if there are other countries that you think might do a better job than the United States of preserving freedom in the years to come.
I think US is in a very unique position because we are bigger economy than China so far right now, at least, right? I do think anybody can fight for freedom, and any tiny country can do. But if the US do not defeat tyranny that is rising in China, no country is left there powerful enough to do that. But because why? Have you ever imagined the world without America? That is a very dark world. You do not want not having America in this world. It's so many people are not coming from America, not understanding the role that America plays in the international stage. Like America has good intention, they made many mistakes like everybody does, right? It's not a perfect country, but it's still by far the greatest country we've got as a humanity. And we need this country so we can defeat the tyranny that is rising, Russia, China, North Korea. I mean, like Venezuela, Cuba, how many countries are right now going through this totalitarianism? And do you know right now, more than half of humanity, more than 4 billion people are living in dictatorship and authoritarian governments. So being free means that we are being in a minority. Like we are living in this little bubble and thinking like everybody living like us and having this freedom to talk about their ideas.
We'll do 2 more questions. The jean jacket.
Hi.
What's your family doing?
Because as I said, North Korea punished people for the association, something called the guilt by association, that I spoke out against the regime. 3 generations of my family got punished. So they are gone. And only family that I got out of North Korea is actually my older sister and my mom. So they are in South Korea. They are living there. And now I'm in America alone. And yeah, Kim Jong-un is still trying to kill me, but I don't know when he's gonna kill me. If that happens, you will see on the news. So everybody will know.
Go ahead.
Hi. I personally have been to North Korea once in 2019. Oh, I'm a Chinese mainlander. So I want to know, have you ever like sensed something has changed or maybe say like progress in the past decades in North Korea?
Yeah. By the way, I love Chinese people. I can't even speak Chinese. You gotta differentiate politics with the people. I mean, what I was saying is like China supporting North Korea means the government. Chinese Communist Party supporting North Korea, not the people. You know, a lot of Chinese people I know hate Kim Jong-un, and they really feel sorry for North Korean people. So I'm very grateful for that. What has been changing lately in North Korea is some people are becoming more equal, right? Like in that way, it's like the elites gathering more power, and they become fiercely rich. Like Kim Jong-un and anybody in that connection, they become very rich, and the people in the bottom become even poorer. So during the pandemic, actually, cannibalism was really spreading. People were that desperate that they are eating people. So it's appalling that 21st century we cannot intervene something like this tragedy. But yeah, people's lives got even worse because of, in the name of pandemic, North Korean regime now is have more legitimacy to control people and what to do with them. I mean, like they literally were killing people if they were coughing. I mean, because in the name of helping other people to be safe, if somebody was coughing, they were like shooting them and sending them prison camps. So the oppression is getting just worse in North Korea.
And last question in the back there. Oh, that's you.
I
Share a little bit about maybe when you discussed living in North Korea and seeing the lights across the border, right? And thinking I can go there and get a bowl of rice, and that was like your dream, right? That was what motivated you, compelled you. And yet you grew up in this theocratic system, essentially where the leaders are gods, right? And it's wrong to speak against the system, and you're told why it is the best thing happening, right? Can you talk a little bit about the cognitive dissonance that happens there? Is there any, what is it like to see that you're living in a hell, right? And yet what you've been told and what I'd imagine you internalize to some degree is that it's actually heaven. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, it's exactly something called a double think, that humans are capable of holding two at the same time. Like if you're living in North Korea, the first thing that I learned was called nothing to envy. As a North Korean, they pretty much to believe that we have nothing to envy in this world while starving to death, right? But then I believed that. I thought I had nothing to envy. I live in the greatest country in the world, and while seeing the dead bodies on the streets every single day. But that is also happening in America. I think a lot of people think that we are living in freedom, but they really don't realize how they are scared of what they say. And it's beginning that overthinking process that's a very unique phenomenon, right? Like if we have a critical thinking, how can we do that? But I think humans are perfectly capable of having these two contradicting thoughts at the same time. And that is a very dangerous sign when you see that symptoms in the society, because then like population can be swayed anyway. Thank you.
Well, with that, thank you very much, Yeonmi. I really appreciate it.
Oh.